Words have power. When the president speaks, his words weigh a ton. And they've heard some things lately that are very disconcerting. But numbers have eloquence too. Yesterday, our nation suffered a horrifying 144,000 new infections recorded. The 8th straight day of over 100,000 cases being reported. More than 65,000 Americans are hospitalized with COVID, a new record that threatens to overwhelm our hospitals, and our hospitals in rural areas particularly affected. The devastating milestone of 10 million Americans infected has been passed. 144 yesterday, 8th day, over 100. 65,000 people hospitalized with COVID. 10 million Americans, more than 10 million Americans infected, and more than 240,000 Americans have died. More than 20 million Americans are on unemployment. An American has 1 million fewer teachers than a year ago. That's why we keep saying honor our heroes. State and local government, where our teachers, over 90% of their budget comes from. Nearly 8 million people have fallen into poverty, and 17 million children in America are food insecure. This is a red alert and all hands on deck, but it should have been a long time ago. The president and the Republicans in Congress have ignored, by delay, distortion, denial, deaths have been caused. And what are they doing now? Continuing to ignore in spite of these numbers that should be so compelling, that are an imperative for us to act upon this. Every kind of avoidance of taking responsibility has been witnessed. Every chance that we had for testing, tracing, treatment, mask wearing, separation, sanitation, but science tells us to do, they have ignored. Their contempt for science and their disdain for governance. Science says wear a mask. Governance says let's enforce that. Science, governance, that's not what they're about. That's not what they're about. And what that is they're engaged in an absurd circus right now, refusing to accept reality. The Republicans are shamefully proceeding without recognizing what our responsibility is and making it even harder to address the massive health, and economic crisis that we're facing. A delayed ascertainment of the major harm caused to the presidential transition is something of another subject. Right now, we are talking about addressing the crisis, the pandemic. If we do so scientifically, we will be able to open our economy, we'll be able to open our schools safely, we're able to do so in a way that recognizes the tragedy that has befallen us in our country because of the Republican denial of science and disdain for governance. So stop the circus and get to work on what really matters to the American people, their health and their economic security. With that, I'm pleased to yield to the distinguished Democratic leader of the Senate, Mr. Schumer.